Hello and welcome to yet another video on Go Figure Customs YouTube channel. I've got I'm going to do another vehicle review. Hopefully you were able to take a look at the review that I just posted not too long ago on the Russian S-400 mobile missile system, which although is a bit expensive, I think it's worth it. I think it's a decent chunk of plastic. I think it's that is worth getting. A lot of playability, even though it's kind of on the cheaper side looking. I think it's rare enough that it's actually worth picking up. What is not on the cheaper side, well, not cheap looking, is stuff from the Bruder line. This is a German, I believe German toy company that makes vehicles that are technically 1/16 scale, which is a little bit bigger than G.I. Joe. And for the most part, they are civilian stuff. So there's a lot of construction equipment. There are a lot of recreational vehicles, Jeeps, and then other what I might call like support vehicles. So fire, there's an ambulance, a garbage truck, I think. I can't even remember what all. They make some really cool stuff that in that scale that if you are looking for unusual but normal type vehicles for your collection, for playability, for dioramas, Bruder looks like the place to go for some of this stuff. The vehicle I'm going to review today is the Range Rover Defender. The Range Rover is obviously a British vehicle. Specifically, the Defender is a vehicle used by the British Army up until recently. I think I saw recently they were going to stop using the Range Rovers. And it's real popular with their special forces. I think mostly the SAS use those. But Bruder makes a 1/16 scale Range Rover Defender. Now, while the military version usually does not have a roof, this one does. And so it's obviously the civilian version. It's not the military version. I would really like to see Bruder expand into military vehicles because this is a fantastic vehicle. This really is a fantastic looking vehicle. This is one that I've been wanting to get for probably a number of years now, but I never pulled the trigger on it previously because if I remember right, I used to think it was fairly expensive. I got this off of Amazon for just over $36 shipped. So I'm not sure if it's always been $36. For some reason, I want to say it used to be like $70 or something like that. And that was a little bit too much for what this is at the time. But I'm not sure if I'm remembering that right or if it's just come to the point where $36 for a vehicle is actually a reasonable price, especially for something of this quality. The plastic they're using, it is a harder plastic than what, like the S-400 video, the Russian vehicle that I reviewed recently. They're using a harder plastic than that, but it's still softer than the vintage G.I. Joe vehicles. So the plastic on this, I don't think is going to become brittle with age. But it's still very durable and very playable. And this thing is playable in the extreme as far as I'm concerned. Let's look at some of the stuff here. I'm going to focus more on the vehicle than myself for a few minutes here. Let's see if we can position this a little better. Just first of all, it has a working suspension system four-wheel working suspension system, which is just fantastic. Independent on all four wheels. It has the hood opens, and it's very detailed on the interior. There's even a swing arm that sits for the hood, and the engine is very detailed in there as well. The doors open, and as you can see, it's very well detailed on the inside as well. You'll notice this little thing here, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. And the tailgate opens as well. And there's 4 seats in there. Plus the usual little greebles that they've added on that I think really make this vehicle. The safari rack and the snorkel, and then the skid bars. And then side mirrors, spare tire, and a tow hook. And I think the tow hook probably would be compatible with just about any of the G.I. Joe vehicles, like the mobile missile system. You know, any of the older vintage stuff that needed to be towed, I think would work really well on this. So, as always, when I review vehicles or figures, I like to hit 3 broad categories. And those 3 categories are, how does it look in the packaging? Is it worth keeping? Is it something that you're going to want to keep mint in box or mint on card? Playability and customizability. The packaging is lackluster on this. I didn't even bother saving it. I took it out of the box and threw the packaging away the second I got it. So packaging, and really, if you're going to open toys, it's not such a big deal, but for the people that are mint on box collectors, this isn't something that you're going to want to keep mint in box. Playability, and this thing is fantastic. I've already showed you a lot of the features about the opening doors, and the safari rack comes off. I don't think the spare tire pops off or is designed to pop off. And then I think, I'm not actually sure. Oh yeah, the sunroof slides back into the roof itself. And if you look underneath, there's this little steering wheel here that comes off, because the steering wheel on the vehicle actually steers the wheels. That is a functioning steering wheel. I don't have any other vehicles that have a functioning steering wheel. So this little part here, you slide it in. It's like a little key, and it fits in there somehow. There we go. And then it acts like a steering wheel from the top. So while you're playing with it, you can steer it from the top, which is gimmicky kind of to me, because it's not something I'm going to use. I mean, this piece is, it's either going to go back underneath and never come off again, or it's just going to get thrown away. I have no use for that. I think it's a pretty cool feature, but I think as far as action features go, I think it's a really cool action feature. But for me, it's kind of lost on me. It's not that I don't play with my figures or my customs very much, as much as I used to. I definitely used to make my customs and vehicles extremely playable, but with the limited time that I have for customizing, I tend not to worry about the playability of my customs, and that kind of leads me into the customizability, the third category of this. Customizability, I think this is going to be maybe on the more difficult side for customizing, aside from just a paint job. It looks like some of the body is tabbed in underneath, but I don't think it all is. I don't think the whole thing is tabbed in. So I'm not, and I don't see any screws on it anywhere, so I'm not entirely sure if the shell of this will just pop right off so I can customize the interior of this or not. I'll refract it and go back on all the way there. There we go. So I don't know how easily it will be to customize the interior of this. The windows are they're not molded to the plastic, but they don't easily pop out either. So that makes painting difficult because you'll have to, because there's even the small window up here on the between the roof and the side. You'll have to mask those off. Painter's tape is what I use to mask stuff off like that. Just put painter's tape, and then I'll take an X-Acto knife around the edge and then peel off the edge and then paint it and then remove that. It's just an added step that makes it a bit more difficult. I would much prefer to just be able to pop the window out, because on stuff like this, vehicles, I tend to use aerosol in one form or another. So I primer everything, so the primer is always aerosol. And then up until recently, vehicles, I use aerosol spray paint. I like Tamiya spray paint. Works fantastic. I've done a lot of vehicle customs with Tamiya spray paint, but I've moved up recently to using an airbrush, and I've done a couple vehicles actually, using an airbrush. I've done a X30 Conquest and a Cobra Hurricane. The Cobra Hurricane came out really nice. I'm really happy with how it came out. The Conquest, not as nice, but I'm still happy with it. So I'm looking at doing airbrushing this as well. But the plastic is really smooth. Paint tends not to stick to smooth plastic like this, so I'm really curious to see how well primer is going to stick to it too. And smooth plastic like this, I'm worried that even if the primer sticks, that the paint won't stick to the primer. Customizing it, I am going to customize it. I am going to customize it, that's for sure. I am going to turn it into kind of a special forces vehicle. I'm kind of torn between keeping it kind of the olive drab color or going with like a desert khaki tan. I haven't quite decided on what I'm going to do with that yet. I like both color schemes. They're both easy to do as far as availability of decent paint, and how they're both easy colors to work with. Painting techniques is another video that I'm hoping to do here shortly on how I paint my customs, and basically that's I do a dark or a medium coat of whatever paint I'm using, and then I do a darker wash, and then I do a lighter dry brush over those two, and that's it. I mean, that's my painting technique, and I think it works well. I'm just not sure how well it's going to stick to this smoother paint is my big concern. Aside from the paint, the other stuff that I would like to do to this, if you Google image the Range Rover Defenders, the British Range Rover Defenders, they have a lot of like backpacks hanging off the side, and a lot of like, gear cases and weapons cases sitting on stuff, and weapons here and there, and that's basically what I'm going to do. I've got some real nice weapons cases that came with BBI accessory packs, so about 10-15 years ago, and then a bunch of random backpacks that I have from 1/18 scale military lines that are kind of oversized for figures, so I don't use them in my customs, but they look really nice when they're attached to a vehicle. So that's what I'm going to do with that. So some weapons cases, some backpacks, a nice paint job, and I'm going to call that a day on this for a custom. I'm not planning on taking the roof off at all. I think it might be interesting to do that, but I'm not going to do it with this one. I'm kind of thinking, well, I'm going to see how this one comes out as far as customizing goes before, because the more I look at it, a nice Dremel right here and taking the doors off wouldn't be that difficult. Taking the windshield off would be pretty easy to do with a Dremel. It'd be about 10-15 minutes worth of work taking that off, and then it'd be a lot easier to customize the inside and get it more military accurate. And the price for this is, for getting a second one, for doing a custom like that, I think is reasonable. It's like I said, I got it for $36. I looked it up this morning on Amazon. It's $34 now. That's definitely one of the things that irritates me about Amazon, is they fluctuate the price frequently, and they've always dropped the price on stuff after I've bought an item. But $36 for a vehicle this quality. I mean, this is honestly, this is better put together than any G.I. Joe vintage vehicle. You know, this beats the hell out of the construction of the Vamp as far as I'm concerned. And as far as playability, we're going to have Destro here, who starred in our last video, show us how there really isn't a whole lot of modification that needs to be made, unlike the Russian vehicle. So he just pops right in there, right in the driver's seat. So there won't be any heavy modification that needs to be done to get a vehicle in there, unlike the Russian vehicle, which, you know, nobody's going to fit in that without heavy modification. And then of course he'll just sit in the, whoop. He knows this is not going to be a Cobra vehicle, so he wants no part of being caught in the back of that. So he sits in the back seat just fine too. So highly playable. I think the fact that it's 1/16 scale makes a big difference, because it is just a hair bigger than it needs to be. So I didn't get this for G.I. Joe figures. I got this for the newer Joy Toy figures. So let's have a look at some of those guys with this vehicle. As you can see, I think this is a really nice vehicle for these guys. You can, when you put a figure next to it, you can really see that the scale is off by just a hair. You can definitely see that they are a bit smaller than your mind notices. Let's put it that way. Your mind sees that the figures are just a little bit smaller than they should be for a vehicle of this size. But honestly, I don't really think it matters a whole lot. I think that looks fantastic. You can imagine this with a custom paint job and some extra greebles added onto this, and I think this is going to look fantastic. It's like these were made for each other, I think. These look fantastic together. You can see, however, that with all the kit that he's got on, he doesn't fit behind the wheel too well. So when I get done making a vehicle, I'm probably going to make a specific custom driver just for this, just for that reason. A little less gear on the back, so he fits in on his back, so he fits in the driver's seat a lot better. So the three main categories: packaging. Nah, you're not going to want to keep this thing in the package that it came in. There's no, well, I won't say there's no collectability to it. I don't actually know what the secondary market for Bruder stuff is. You know, like the Playmobil stuff, I know some of that stuff can be hard to find, and collectors are looking for specific stuff on that. But this is something that you can get off of Amazon for less than $40. So there's no real reason to want to keep it in the packaging to begin with. And once you get this, this isn't a vehicle to keep in the package anyway. This is something to play with. This is designed and made to be played with. It is durable. It is hard. It's durable plastic that is not going to break, which I think is after years and years and years of vintage GI Joe vehicles, is a godsend. Really, it's a step above some of the cheaper vehicles that you would get at like the ones that gosh, I don't remember the name of the line of the vehicles that you used to be able to get at Toys R Us that they came with the weapons that were way overscaled, but some of the vehicles were actually pretty nice. The Chap May stuff, they use that softer plastic that's not going to break, that's a little less detailed in the sculpting. That's kind of the one end of the extreme, and then the GI Joe vintage stuff where there was fantastic detail sculpted into that stuff, just amazing amounts of detail. I mean, you want to see something that's somebody took an insane amount of put an insane amount of effort into. Go look at the Defiant. Look at the amount of sculpting and detail that went into the Defiant playset. It's just mind-boggling how much stuff they put into that sculpt. But the plastic's hard, and it breaks real easily, especially the doors on the crawler and the shuttle bay doors. So that's kind of the other extreme. This is right in the middle. It's hard enough plastic that it's going to be durable, but it's soft enough that it's not going to break. And the price point, I think, is also what sells it for me, because where are you going to get a vehicle for $36 these days? Number one, you can't get anything. The secondary market for GI Joe is just insane right now because there's nothing coming out, and people are taking advantage of that and selling their stuff for way more than it probably is worth, depending on opinion, of course. But you're not gonna, and there's nothing coming out. I mean, nobody's doing realistic military toys right now aside from like vehicles anyway. Aside from Chap May and like the Elite, the stuff that used to come out at Toys R Us, but you can't get that anymore. But somebody else has picked up that line, I think, because I've seen some of the stuff, like the C-130. I've seen somebody else is making that C-130 right now. So I mean, you're not going to be able to get a vehicle for $36 these days, period, that your G.I. Joe guys or your 1/18th scale figures are going to fit in this nicely. You're not going to be able to get something of this quality. You're not going to get something that is this playable, and you're not going to get something that has probably really good customizing potential for $36 anymore. And that's definitely one of the things that I've looked at. I think if I had a lot more time on my hands and just a little bit more money, they do make construction vehicles, so I would be tempted to get a bunch of the construction vehicles and paint them in Devastator colors. There's cement mixers and bulldozers, and I don't know if there's all of the vehicles that would fit in a Constructicon team, but there's sure a lot of them that you could get a decent start on them and make some 1/18th scale customs in Devastator colors, and I think those would be fantastic. I'm contemplating that. We'll see if that might be a future project at some point in time, and you could do it for a reasonable amount of money, because these aren't as expensive as one would think. So is it worth it for playability and customizability? Yeah, I think so. I think the customizing ability is not going to be for the beginner. I think this is going to be moderate probably in your moderate range. This doesn't look like it comes apart that easily. I haven't tried to take it apart yet. I'm not sure I'm going to. I'm not sure I need to. Probably will when I want to paint it, but we're going to burn that bridge when we get to it. So this is definitely, I would say this is more of a moderate scale customizing. Sure, you could tape up the windows and just spray paint it and then glue some stuff to it and call it a day, and it would probably look pretty decent. So that's kind of your higher end of the low skill level of customizing. But for what I want to do to it, this is definitely more the mid-range, moderate skill level for customizing. So keep that in mind if that's something that you're looking for. If you're wanting to make like the realistic version of this for the military, that's definitely going to be a moderate skill level custom. But you know, for what I paid for it, I think it's fantastic, and I'm absolutely glad I finally got one of these because I've been wanting one for years. So again, thank you for watching another review on Go Figure Customs YouTube channel, and please like the video, please comment on the video, please share the video, please subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned because I have a lot more stuff that I want to show you. And thanks for watching.